In the production of Pioneers and Places, we get the opportunity to talk with some really remarkable people. Gordon Jennens is one of those people. He lives in Kelowna, and this is actually the Viking ship that he built back in the 1960s. Gordon Jennens has done a lot more than build an authentic Viking ship. As a matter of fact, he started building stuff when he was just barely able to walk. Tonight on Pioneers and Places, the exhausting story of the work of Gordon Jennens. Welcome to Okanagan Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with my guest for tonight talking about Gordon Jennens is Gordon Jennens. How are you, Gordon?
Glad to meet you.
Good to have you on the show. Gordon Jennens has done so much, and in this next half hour we're going to try and get somewhere. Now, I have in front of me here, drawn on linen, an example of the work that your father did when he was an apprentice to be an engineer in England.
That's right.
This is of an iron roof.
Yes.
And he did all the drawing and all the printing?
Oh, yes.
I thought his name was Dick Jennens.
He was named Oliver, but they made fun of that name when he came to Canada, so he decided to change it to Dick.
He left England behind and all of this for Canada. And when we see this picture of him riding a horse, did he want to be a cowboy in Canada?
Yeah, oh, yes. Oh, not necessarily a cowboy. He liked the outside. He liked the fishing and the hunting. He wanted the freedom of the West.
He started off laying a sewer for downtown Kelowna, but
that's right.
That's not where he stopped. I mean, look at what his talents were, and he achieved a lot.
The only industry we had was the fruit industry. He worked his way up and eventually owned his own packing houses and built the first cold storage in the valley. And this is back in the 20s.
Yeah. Well, you were born in 1923.
Yes.
What kind of a dad was he?
Gave me a lot of time, but he never taught me anything. He figured I should figure it out for myself. Eventually, by figuring it out myself, I might learn more, you know.
You laced your own shoes.
Yeah, well, that was one of the first things I had to tie up the shoes, because he wouldn't do it for me. So I sat there until I had to figure it out how to do it. See, that was before I would learn to walk. I learned that automatically, I guess.
Just to get on with your next project.
Yeah.
This must be the best plane built in Kelowna at the time.
Best prototype. There was no other prototype.
How old were you when you built this?
6. My mother threw an old wooden ironing board out and it looked like a fuselage of an airplane, and so I took neighbors' fences and nailed this together and dreamed about flying.
You built boats as well. Some of these are just elegant. Look at this beautiful little lightweight unit here.
Yeah, well, that was my second one. And when they built Pendozi Street, I'd go and take the tar off there to caulk the planks.
How long was it before the police became aware of you?
Well, when I built my scooter, actually, I was about 12. I had to line up an engine. I got an old washing machine engine out of some farmer. I can't remember the details. I didn't know if the engine worked, and I didn't know anything about engines. I didn't want to go to all the trouble of making the seat and everything else. I just wanted the floorboard and the wheels, the steering wheel up in front. I'd push it down McDougall Street in front of my house, and it wouldn't fire, and then I turned the gear a little bit more, and all of a sudden it hit, and the bloody thing took off. I couldn't get stopped because I was driving down McDougall Street going north. I knew there was a sand pile at the other end of it, but I tried to east down here and get the spark plug pulled out. And I couldn't, and I hit the sand pile, went one way, and it stopped the motor anyways. I had the power I needed, so I built the seat and throttle and everything else.
That's what we have here. This is actually what's left of your first scooter.
I built it to go to school, you know, and I was the envy of the school because nobody had such things as scooters, not even motorcycles. This is the hungry 30s. Bill Cameron bought it from me, and He took it from barn to barn over the years. And on my 70th birthday, 67 years later,
Yeah.
I come home and he's got this thing dumped.
And that's it right there.
That's it, dumped there. I think he was trying to get his 50-year warranty on it, but if 67 years had gone by, he couldn't get that,
Got to take a break here and come back because Gordon Jennens advances rapidly from building his own scooter, and we'll talk about that right after this break. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts talking with Gordon Jennens about his remarkable career. Your teachers, obviously, I mean, here's a guy building planes and kayaks and boats and scooters, knew you had a great future engineering something. Who was the guy that got you set up to go to California?
Stibbs, my principal of my school at the time.
You were how old then?
I was 16, and it was war on, and most kids were quitting school to go into the war, and he didn't want me to do that. He thought I'd be better in the industry, so he wanted me to go to California, or MIT at the time, but the war speeded things up. Off to California went.
At the age of 16?
Yeah, 16, on a crash program.
A crash program in an aviation business.
Yeah, because no social life, it was all engineering, all technical stuff. The only breaks we had was weekends, which I learned to fly on, and so forth.
So you're down in California, or was everybody else 16 years of age, or were you pretty young for the group?
I was pretty young at that time.
Did it come naturally to you?
Oh yeah, it was because everything I do, I want to do it. I've never been working. My wife always says I have a lifetime hobby.
Of just coming up with new stuff.
Yeah, I like working. I like building things.
How long did it take you to, I don't know whether you got a degree or whether you got a paper or a certificate.
Our neighbor right there in Glendale, California was Lockheed Aircraft. They only had 70 engineers prior to the war. They needed 17,000. When they saw what you were best in, as an example, mine was in production tool design. They rooted you in that way. They didn't have time to teach you all the other stuff that had nothing related. So it was a very concentrated effort. But we gained all this when we worked. They put us in the industry as fast as they could. We graduated on a Friday, and we had to turn up Monday 1,000 miles away.
You graduated when you were 18, and where did you end up working?
I went first to the Boeing plant in Seattle, and then they decided to put a plant in West Georgia, believe it or not.
And in Vancouver?
In Vancouver, just before you go to Stanley Park.
What kind of planes did they build there?
We built a Ferry Battle aircraft. That's a 3-man attack bomber, but it wasn't armored enough, and the British, because it blew them out of the sky, the Germans in Dunkirk, and so they decided to build a plant out of Sea Island, and Boeing built the PBYs, and then I went out to work in the engineering department in the PBYs.
Now the PBYs, Canadians also know them as CANSOs.
That's right.
Twin engine flying boats.
Flying boat, yeah. The most famous boat in the world, I figure the most famous aircraft in the world, but I won't get into detail. So
here you are as a 18, 19, 20-year-old building planes.
That's right. We had about 2,000 people working in the Sea Island plant. It was a much bigger plant. 2.5 years later, that's when I decided to go in the Air Force. I went in as air crew as a pilot, but they weren't moving the pilot so fast. So I got transferred as a flight engineer, and I got my wing as a flight.
You could get into action quicker as a flight engineer than a pilot.
At that particular time.
Where did you serve?
Got my wing back in Elmer, Ontario, and then they had a surplus. See, this is getting towards the end of the war. They had a surplus air crew, and so they wouldn't put us in civilians. They let us go back to Civilian Street in civies, but a call up in 30 days in case the Japanese war didn't go as good as they thought it might. And we were reserve, so I heard that the British Fleet Arm was still recruiting pilots. So I phoned this guy up in Kingston, and he said, get on down here. And so I decided to join the British Navy. I had to get a release from the Canadian Air Force. That way I got overseas. And when I got there, That's the only thing I accomplished. I didn't even see the inside of an aircraft. You know, the Americans went and dropped the bomb, you know, and put
And the war
end.
was over.
But I met my wife. I'll tell you a cute little story on that. When I found her and I saw a beautiful girl in the hallway, I said, I better phone Hitler and tell him to pack it in because I got the girl I want and I'm going to take her home. But the bugger wouldn't answer the phone. So I let my friends finish them off and came on home.
And got married later.
Yeah.
Going to take a break because post-war, you don't let any grass grow under your feet. We'll be back with more from Gordon Jennens in a minute. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts talking with Gordon Jennens about Gordon Jennens' stuff. So you get back from the war, you got to get a job. You set up a company called GenCraft. What do you build?
I found out that nobody built racing shells in Canada, so I decided to try that. The city gave me a job to build one war canoe for Kelowna and one for Penticton.
Did you have any experience, or what did you do? Just look at an old one and adapt?
I used my aircraft experience, you know, and the aircraft is very fine work, you know, and at that time, a lot of them were actually still being made out of wood, believe it or not.
Yeah. You discovered no one was building them in the rest of the country.
In Canada. Only one builder, George Pocock, in the United States. And,
well, how did you prove to them that you could build a good racing shell?
I took my first racing shell on top of an old Model A and went off to California, and we went to Vancouver Rowing Club and all the rowing clubs and universities all the way down the coast of San Diego. And the first one that really showed a buying interest was Torkelson. I built one about a year later for him, and he won a national championship with that. But what really broke the ice, UBC or somebody told this fellow from Winnipeg that I was building shells up here, and when he arrived, all I had was my shell up on the rafters full of dust on it. I was building an arena floor, and he says, I thought you were a shell builder. I said, so he says, maybe next year, it looked pretty nice. He said, maybe next year I'll buy one for my son. And the Winnipeg Rowing Club, the British were so far behind on their orders on account of the war. He never got his boat for that summer for his son. So he asked me if I build one, and I worked like a dog to get one out. I put it in a crate with wet varnish. My wife varnished it while it was still in the crate. And he had a world's champion, American national championship on St. Paul to race in about 3 or 4 days. And so we put on the Model A and chased up to Vernon. I missed the train there in Vernon, see, in the express office. And he says, chase up there and you flag that train down. Well, I came down the hill onto the ramp on the platform, and the old Model A went right over the front end, went right over the platform. And I had to go down the train track and yell to him to slow down.
To get this?
And they stopped the train and going up to the station, and they all lifted the Model A back on, and they took the shell up to Salmon Arm and took it back to St. Paul, and they drove all night with the shell, never been in the water. He won an American National Championship at the time.
In 1952, the Olympics were held in Helsinki, Finland.
Yeah.
How many racing shells did you build for that?
The contract was for 4. They ended up using almost double that because they got damaged in the high sea going over. The cargo shifted. I flew over, and we borrowed a bunch of Norwegian boats. You know.
Well, what did you have to do?
Like this model here, that's what they call a port rig, and all Canadian oarsmen row port rig. But the Norwegians rowed starboard rig. You know, the stroke, the first guy in the boat, rows on the starboard side of the boat.
Except for the Canadians who were on the other side.
Yeah, so
typical.
All our guys are trained to row that way. So we had to take all these Norwegian boats and build all new riggers, new outposts and so forth. And we only had about, I think, 3 days or something like that. So we went out to all the boat yards on Helsinki trying to get all the materials. I had to beef up all these posts, side posts that hold the riggers, and I had to make new riggers on the other side, and that was a lot of work.
How did we do at the Helsinki Olympics?
We actually got in the semifinals in all 4 and 8s. And we could have got the finals. You know, I'm sure we had our own boats. The 8 is an example, weighed over 340 pounds that we had from Norway. Our 8s were weighing 220 pounds at that time, so they were a handicap. They didn't have a chance, but at least they made the semifinals, and the guys were happy because they wouldn't even got in the water. I hadn't gone over to work on these boats.
How many boats in all did you build out of your factory in Kelowna?
110 racing shells and about 40-odd work boats, you know, training boats.
How many people do you employ to do this? How big, look at this factory floor with all of these boats.
Not too many, because they were very hard to get people. It was all custom work. We had an average on about 15 people when we were in the main building. We had about 3 shifts, you know, kit and caught up in orders. So we had to fly shells back east, and they would meet deadlines. And oh God, that's
I mean, when you weren't building shells, you were building oars, and when you weren't building oars for shells, you were building oars for the South American Navy.
First, they started out with the Canadian Navy. First order was for 350 of them, and I thought that'd last until the next war, you know.
To the next war.
But they were supplying all NATO contracts, you see, because we had the spruce and the contractors in Canada.
So
we built
where'd you get the spruce?
2,000 to 3,000 oars a year for the Navy, and then that led to an order for South America for steering oars down to 42 feet long.
And look at this is a shot of that, and you've got people standing on the roof holding up these 42-foot oars.
2 stories high. They were 38, 40, and 42-foot oars. Took, for a boxcar, you could only get 36 oars in it. They were 350 pounds apiece.
So while you were building shells, you were building oars, you were building floors.
Arena floors, yeah.
Now, this is a time when a lot of memorial arenas are being created after the war.
Yeah.
And they needed to be able to put down a wooden floor over the concrete and ice.
Yeah.
You did it. Tell me how you got that idea.
My competitor for regular boats was Art Jones. I wanted to see him one time, and if he didn't like you around, he took a 2x4 here, you know. He said, "Don't bother me. I'm going to build an arena floor." And I said, "Well, who for?" And he says, "Well, the city. He's going to buy an arena floor." And so I phoned Dick Parkinson and said, "What's all this about?" This is about 10 o'clock in the morning, see. And he says, "You got to, if you're interested, you get a bid in before 5, and you know, if it's good, it will get you to build a floor." You know, by this time he knew I could do it, you know, from other work I did.
Yeah.
So I put my bid in, and I got my first arena floor. I beat Art Jones. And
He wishes he'd taken that 2x4 to you.
That led to Kamloops, and then led to I built trails for CMNS, and then Kerrisdale and Vancouver, and then Penticton.
I'm trying to picture an arena floor in my brain. I mean, what is it? Is it a series of squares numbered?
Yeah, 4x12 panels, and they're made in the frame, like you frame a wall of a house. But they had tongue and groove maple flooring on each section. We built a production jig just like we did in the aircraft to build wing sections. We had a jig that held everything in place and just put the pieces in and nailed them. And 90% of the work was done in the plant. And then we hauled them over to Trail and Kerrisdale. And
you load them on a flat deck truck and traveled them over.
Yeah, and they took a whole carload of maple to build one floor.
I mean, you're talking a boxcar load, a railway car.
A boxcar load of maple to build one arena floor. So we used 5 boxcars of maple.
Here's a shot of a flat deck truck, and it's got one complete. Is that the whole arena floor on the back of that truck?
No,
or part
no,
of it?
no. He took about 12 or 15 loads down. That was for trail. In those days, there was no gas stations open at night at all. So he couldn't take the trip over and get the floor sections to dawn in time unless he took a barrel of gas. The gas ferry only went at 2 o'clock at night. That's the only time you could take gas in barrels across.
And you didn't want to wait that long?
Oh, couldn't, because we had to get the arena floors over to Don Poole because he had to lay the floor. You know, it was on a deadline. So we kind of hid the barrel underneath the tarp. The guy that takes you tickets on the ferry, he pulled the tarp up and saw this barrel, and he says, "Back off the ferry. You got to wait till 2 o'clock in the morning." So I said, "Well, get Jack Chambers, the water taxi guy, and he'll take it over to across the lake." They phoned me back in about 5-10 minutes. We got another problem. He says, we rolled the barrel down into the jack chamber, water taxi, and it slipped and rolled, flipped the water taxi over and it sank in the... So we all had to go down and take the barrel out and scoop up all the water out of the water taxi. And he got it across the lake, and we planked it up on the truck, and off the trail he went.
So you've got arena floors, you've got shells, and then as time goes on, you have more elaborate jobs to do. The floating bridge needed collapsible forms to build these pontoons.
That's right.
Tell me about how you came up with the idea for the collapsible forms.
The pontoons are 50 feet wide, 200 feet long, with 56 flotation cells.
Sure, you don't, if you get a hole in one, you don't want the whole thing to sink.
That's right. To get down in these cells on the finished product, they had plates, manholes.
Yeah.
And you see those manholes today as you drive across the bridge. First, I better tell you, they poured the walls and the bottom and the sides of the cell, but they had to pour the slab for the highway on top.
Yep.
And that had to be retracted out this tiny little manhole. I got the idea, collapsible form. You can see gates that keep kids from falling down the stairs are collapsible forms. It's the same principle. They collapse,
Yep.
get smaller. When they got the walls all poured, they put these collapsible forms out. They stretched them out full width to cover the thing. Then they arranged with a paper company to make a special paper to go over, waxed on both sides, and they poured the highway, the 8-inch highway on top of that form. Then when the concrete was set, they'd pull the paper down in the forms, collapse them and feed them out that manhole, and they repeated this. And both Emerson and I worked the details out of it, and we filed a patent on it, but some crazy American got the idea in Germany before us, so the guy beat us out of that one.
Gordon, we've run out of time, but your brain hasn't stopped working still.
Oh.
You want to build not another bridge on Okanagan Lake, you want to build a submerged floating tunnel across it.
Oh yes, that's the best thing for the valley. Puts the lake back how it was and safer and everything else. And we have all the facts and statistics from the Europeans, including the Norwegians, which are most advanced on all the technology. But they play games with you, like they play games with me on my other projects. That's the way the ball goes. You know, it's not how hard it is to build these things; it's how hard to handle the bureaucratic, political, personal problems. You know.
Gordon, I thank you very much for taking time to talk to me about a little about your life. We'll have to get you back on for some other details about the Viking ship, for example. We'll do that next time. Okay.
Okay.
Gordon Jennens, ladies and gentlemen, a phenomenon in the central Okanagan. We'll see you next time on Pioneers in Places.